Disclaimer. This book may contain content that is considered historically inaccurate or culturally insensitive by modern standards. My hope is that by exploring old literature, we will better understand why people of the past thought the way that they did and understand the influences that shape their culture. This video is not intended for young audiences. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm excited to read to you from Out of Door Book, which is the 7th book in a series or collection of books called The Children's Hour, which was published by Houghton Mifflin Co. in 1907. The Elephants That Struck by Samuel White Baker. I remember an occasion, many years ago, when in Ceylon, I, in connection with my brother, had organized a scheme for the development of a mountain sanitarium at Nuera Elia. We had a couple of tame elephants employed in various works, but it was necessary to obtain the assistance of the government stables for the transport of very heavy machinery, which could not be conveyed in the ordinary native carts. There were accordingly a large number of elephant wagons, drawn by their colossal teams, some of which required 4 elephants. It was the wet season upon the mountains. Our settlement was 6,200 feet above the sea, and the zigzag pass from Rambouillet at the base of the steep ascent was 15 miles in length. The crest of the pass was 7,000 feet in altitude, from which we descended 800 feet to the Nuera Elia plain. The elephant wagons, having arrived at Rambouillet from Colombo, about 100 miles distant, commenced the heavy uphill journey. The rain was unceasing, the roads were soft, and the heavily laden wagons sunk deeply in the ruts. But the elephants were mighty beasts, and, laying their weight against the work, they slowly dragged the vehicles up the yielding and narrow way. The abrupt zigzags bothered the long wagons and their still longer teams. The bridges over dangerous chasms entailed the necessity of unloading the heavier carts, and caused great delay. Day after day passed away, but although the ascent was slow, the wagons still moved upwards, and the region of everlasting mist, at that season, was reached. Dense forests clothed the mountainsides. The roar of waterfalls resounded in the depths of black ravines. Tangled bamboo grass crept upwards from the wet soil into the lower branches of the moss-covered trees, and formed a green curtain impenetrable to sight. The thermometer fell daily as the altitude increased. The elephants began to sicken. 2 fine animals died. There was plenty of food, as the bamboo grass was the natural provender, and in the carts was a good supply of paddy. But the elephants' intelligence was acting against them. They had reasoned, and had become despondent. For 9 or 10 days they had been exposed to ceaseless wet and cold, dragging their unmanageable wagons up a road that even in dry weather was insufficient to sustain the weight. The wheels sank deep below the metal foundation, and became hopelessly embedded. Again and again the wagons had to be emptied of their contents, and extra elephants were taken from the other carts and harnessed to the empty wagons, which were, by sheer weight of animals, dragged from the deep mire. Thus the time had passed, and the elephants had evidently reasoned upon the situation, and had concluded that there was no summit to the mountain, and no end to the steep and horrible ascent. It would be, therefore, useless to persevere in unavailing efforts. They determined, under these heartbreaking circumstances, to strike work. And they did strike. One morning a couple of the elephant drivers appeared at my house in Nuera Elia and described the situation. They declared that it was absolutely impossible to induce the elephants to work. They had given it up as a bad job. I immediately mounted my horse and rode up the pass, and then descended the road upon the other side, timing the distance by my watch. Rather under 2 miles from the summit, I found the road completely blocked with elephant carts and wagons. The animals were grazing upon bamboo grass in the thick forest. The rain was drizzling, and a thick mist increased the misery of the scene. I ordered 4 elephants to be harnessed to a cart intended for only 1 animal. This was quickly effected, and the drivers were soon astride the animals' necks, and prodded them with the persuasive iron hooks. No not an elephant would exert itself to draw. In vain the drivers, with relentless cruelty, drove the iron points deep into the poor brutes' necks and heads, and used every threat of their vocabulary. The only response was a kind of marking time on the part of the elephants, which simply moved their legs mechanically up and down, and swung their trunks to and fro, but none would pull or exert the slightest power. Neither did they move forward a single inch. I never saw such an instance of passive and determined obstinacy. The case was hopeless. An idea struck me. I ordered the drivers to detach the 4 elephants from the harness, and to ride them thus unfettered up the pass, following behind my horse. It appeared to me that if the elephants were heartbroken and in despair at the apparently interminable mountain pass, it would be advisable to let them know the actual truth, by showing them that they were hardly 2 miles from the summit, where they would exchange their uphill labor for a descent into Nuera Elia. They should then have an extra feed, with plenty of jaggery, a coarse brown sugar, and be introduced to the companionship of our 2 female elephants. If they passed an agreeable night, with the best of food and warm quarters, they would possibly return on the following day to their work, and with lighter hearts would put their shoulders to the wheel, instead of yielding to a dogged attitude of despair. The success of this ruse was perfect. The elephants accompanied me to Nuera Elia, and were well fed and cared for. On the following day we returned to the heavy work, and I myself witnessed their start with a hitherto unyielding wagon. Not only did they exert their full powers, and drag the lumbering load straight up the fatiguing hill without the slightest hesitation, but their example, or some unaccountable communication between them, appeared to give general encouragement. I employed the most willing elephants as extras to each wagon, which they drew to the summit of the pass, and then returned to assist the others, thus completing what had been pronounced by the drivers as utterly impossible. There can be no doubt that the elephants had at once perceived the situation, and in consequence recovered their lost courage. And that is the end of The Elephants That Struck by Samuel White Baker. I hope that you enjoy this story and that you're having a great day. Bye!